This is NHTV2, North Haven Government Television, a service of North Haven Community Television. The following program is brought to you through the support of the Town of North Haven.
All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the February 21st meeting of the North Haven, Town of North Haven, Board of Finance. I'd like to call the meeting to order. I'd like to start with the minutes from our last meeting on January 17th. Any comments, questions on the minutes, please? I'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion to accept.
I heard a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Nay. Not nay, none, sorry. Okay, a couple things under old business. Nancy last month asked if we could get a breakout of the miscellaneous income, which Ingrid just handed out to us moments ago. So take a look. If there's any questions on it, maybe we could just ask Ingrid at a later time. There's a few items on there.
Would we have the opportunity to discuss or comment on it at the next meeting?
Sure.
I don't know if you need that as an agenda item, but...
No.
Okay.
All right, a couple other things. We had our last workshop. It included the Board of Ed. At the close of the workshop, I waited a week or so, but I did send Christian a series of questions that came up. He did respond today. I handed that email out to the members. I actually even have not had a chance to read it myself, but I did hand it out to all the members. Likewise, Chief Januszewski followed up with a question that arose at his workshop. That was forwarded by the Board of Finance out to the members. I think that was yesterday. Let's see what else we got. Ingrid, quick comment on the CAFR and the timing, if you wouldn't mind, please.
We filed an extension, and we should be expecting it, where are we, March? May. May.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, thank you. We've mentioned at the last couple meetings, the Board of Finance does have an email address. It's in tonight's agenda, but I have been stating it on air just so people know. It's boardoffinance@northaven-ct.gov. If anyone has any questions or comments on the budget or any of the proceedings, they can feel free to email that address, which is also, I believe, on the website under the Finance Department, and those will be routed through myself, but then to the full board. Lastly, we have a relatively short agenda this evening. At 7 o'clock, we have our final workshop with the Registrar of Voters, the tax assessor, the tax collector, followed by the police department at 7:30. All right, new business. We have our regular reports. If we could start with the revenue for the month of January. If there's any comments or questions, please go ahead.
I'd just like to request a breakdown of what of the in lieu of tax receipts of $142,000 this previous month.
Ingrid, you and I talked about that.
Yes.
What was that again?
It's the solar companies.
Oh, yeah. Right, yeah.
I can break
That was the biggest thing, Mike, yeah.
Breakdown, yeah,
Right.
I can do that.
The solar company...
So that there's
what happens?
some statutes with the state, with OPM, that there's certain like utilities, you'll see that in the telephone access line too, they have to give some reporting to the state, and they're the ones that collect the taxes, and that's how we get them. But this is for the solar companies.
Now is...
So I'm assuming, one second,
property
Mike.
tax.
So I'm assuming that what's happening is that the solar farm, which is on the old landfill.
Yes.
No? I'm sorry, okay, Mike's gonna fill us in.
No.
No?
So what this is, this is All Saints Cemetery.
Oh,
It's a
okay.
pilot program that we put together there years ago on the northeast section of the cemetery. That's what this is for solar, is a pilot. payment in lieu of taxes.
Right.
Is that what you,
The pilot,
that's what
it's,
it- yeah.
it's a different, is that it?
What?
The
It was
pilot?
solar.
you
It was
said
definitely
solar, right?
It was.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
so-
this one was a different,
Yeah.
yeah.
So what's that one you're looking at, Ingrid?
The town general revenue in
Yep.
lieu of taxes.
Okay, so we get this payment from Northeast, we get this payment from, it's either Green Skies or another,
Yes.
Green Skies.
Yes.
That's for the northeast section of the cemetery. It's a 5-megawatt facility. It's a payment in lieu of taxes.
So now, is this in excess of what we budgeted when we set up a budget estimating $295,000 I'm sorry, $300,000 of income? Were we just really considering what the state pays us in lieu of taxes for our non-taxable items, whatever that percentage is or
Yeah,
would be?
Yeah, I believe so. yeah.
So
There's
so-
two, there's
so
two
the
pilot
140
numbers on here, Mike. Just so you know, sorry to interrupt. There's two pilot numbers on this revenue, There's one under state of Connecticut and there's one under town general.
Okay, all right, thank you
Right.
for clarifying that.
Okay.
When we set up that number of 300,000 on that line of town revenue in lieu of taxes, were we anticipating this to come from the solar source? Or is this sort of extra money to the town that we did not anticipate?
And the farm's been up for a couple of years, right?
Yeah, so, the money from northeast, the northeastern portion of the cemetery should be projected in the 300,000.
Okay.
But I'm not sure what your original question was to Ingrid.
No, well, well, I had a couple questions.
Yeah.
And one was my confusion over the state money and the local.
Right.
In the local section here. But no, when that 300,000 number was put together, I did not recall what the sources of that revenue would be.
Now, there is another project that would not be part of the $300,000, another solar project on the other side of the cemetery. So I'm not sure when what that payment is that you've asked Ingrid about, but, so there's gonna be two solar contributions from All Saints Cemetery to the town pilot money, not the state pilot money, the local pilot.
So it's like building fees.
Well, no, it's not building fees, it's different. It's a payment in lieu of the
Right.
taxes for the infrastructure of the solar.
Oh, because that land, once solar goes on, it becomes non-taxable?
So
Not the
it's
land,
or-
it's
not-
the panels, Mike.
it's the panels. So
Yeah.
the cemetery, there's no taxes paid on this, by the cemetery, right? So they receive the lease income from the solar companies. We engage, and I'm directly involved with this, engage in pilot programs that are payment in lieu of the taxes on the infrastructure.
On the infrastructure?
Right.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much.
Okay.
I have two questions about revenue. One is, Ingrid, if you could also add to the list of miscellaneous sources of revenue from the sale of the 12 auctioned items that Rich Monaco is selling. Because eventually that will go into the general fund, and I think it will probably kind of.
Well, this is a year-to-date, so
Yeah,
yes.
know it.
when-
But
yeah.
ultimately, there'll be a category.
yes.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
And then, Mr. Frieda, perhaps you can shed some light on the fact that there's no line item in our revenue report for the fund balance transfer, both appropriated and unappropriated, that's included in our budget. Appropriated of $290,000 and unappropriated of $1,135,000.
Well, this isn't the budget, Nancy, this is just the revenue
Right.
that's coming in. That's just a fund transfer.
Right, but don't we normally have that as the very first category?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I think it has been in there in
Has it?
past years.
Because at some point, we have to make the decision, right, as to whether it's collected or not collected, so it should be in the report.
I think, from what I recall, we do that toward the end of the year when we roll it over. That's maybe what you're thinking about in the revenue reports. But if we haven't rolled it over yet, we usually roll it over at the end of the year,
Yes.
not during the year.
Right,
So that's
well-
probably why you don't see it here.
We don't get MRSA until the last 2 weeks of the year, but it's still listed in our report, right?
Well,
So,
well,
I just wanted to point that out.
All right, but
Okay.
with this conversation, just for those watching on TV, it is listed in the budget, the
Yes.
fund balance.
Most
as
certainly.
part of our budget, so. Okay.
Okay, that's all I have for revenue.
Any other questions or comments on revenue? If not, let's move over to expenditures.
There's really not much. I mean, maintenance equipment, wage differential, certain items that we've already talked about that we expected would be high for a line item, but looking at the total of the departments, they're all pretty close. That's my opinion.
I think my math, by the way, while people are still thinking, was that this shows that we've used 60.6% of the budget, but about 1.4% of that was encumbrances. And then because we basically paid all of our principal on the bonds for the year, I kind of ballparked it at about 55% expended year-to-date, which is less than what we would be on a straight pro rata basis, which would be 58.3%. Anyone else on the expenditures? Mike?
I do have something, but I'll wait for
Good.
yeah.
I just had one quick question on page 14, and that is under parks. The track and field facility maintenance. It appears as though there's a $3,000 charge for the month of January, and I'm just curious as to what could have possibly been done during the month of January to Vandercourt Field or the track. And I assume the encumbrance is just for the remainder of the year.
I can look into that.
Okay.
It might be a contract that it just gets payment split every month.
I had that one highlighted also.
Mike, did you have something?
Yeah, it had to do with the way we account for medical expenses on page 17. Of course, as I may have mentioned before, we, from an accounting point of view, we just expend 1/12 of what the budgeted amount is every month. And we know that's being self-insured, that we're responsible for claims. And I don't know what claim history is right now, but there's been some warnings that the claims history may be higher than what was budgeted.
Yes.
And we do have some money in reserve, although I don't know the amount in the reserve account. So there's a lot of unknowns there, and for that reason, being the former representative of this board on the medical insurance workshop, I am requesting to have a meeting with them, with our agents for both the town and the Board of Ed, sometime before the April Board of Finance meeting. Is that something, Mr. Free, that you had already anticipated or thought was logical at this time?
I'll give it some thought. There's no value in it for me personally because I'm dealing with them on a regular basis. But I understand your request and we'll take it under consideration.
Why don't we start with this? I was in on some of the meetings that Mike's referencing, and we did used to get a report from both the companies that manage the plans, which laid out our claims to date and where we were with reserves. So I'm assuming we still get those reports?
Yeah.
So maybe we could circulate the latest one to the board. That would be a start.
The good news on this is that we don't know if it's a trend yet, but the last month, December, was the lowest of all the months. So that was a good thing. Historically, we wait until the very end to see if we can capture some low months to adjust our current percentage of what we think. As we're working on this coming budget in July, for July 1st, we have a high percentage of increase because of the claims history. So hopefully December is an indication that it's trending the other way, but we don't know. But if you want to have the meeting, we'll do it.
Listen,
But-
by the way, I'm not saying, we obviously trust your management skills, and you're going to know a lot more than we're going to know on a daily basis because of your involvement with the many facets of this town. But if we're supposed to have some sort of oversight and creation of a new budget, we damn well have to know what's going on currently, not only for the town, on the town side, but on the Board of Ed side, because they gave us a big number too. How do we know if it's legitimate?
Well, the number that they gave and the number that we've currently projected is based on everything through November. So now we have a low month in December, so we'll see where that ends up.
This was a regular meeting we used to have every year, and not that we need it every year, but we did not have one last year.
Yeah, but didn't we get a report? I thought we got a report halfway through. I remember that.
My recollection is that we either get a monthly or quarterly report from it. I think Brown handles the Board of Ed. I forget who handles the town side.
Blue Point.
Thank you very much for this consideration.
Well, yes.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay.
All right, others on the expenditure side?
For the capital expenditures, for both the library elevator, this is on page 18, both the library elevator and the, I think it's the Life Pack. Are these, the expenditure is just kind of the down payment for ordering each of those things, and then the encumbrance is the balance?
For the library elevator?
The library elevator, the very first capital item,
Yep.
appears as though there's about 11.4 thousand down, but then an encumbrance of 17. And then down towards the bottom, Life Pack 15, I remember authorizing this for the fire department at $50,000, but looks like it's 15.9. Is that, you have to put down a certain amount and then the balance will come upon delivery? Is that how that's set up?
It's usually, we already have, for the light pack, we probably already got one, and then they're waiting for delivery of the rest.
Oh, there's
We don't
numerous?
usually,
Okay. I thought it
there's
was,
15, or is that light pack 15? I think, is that 15 or just one? I don't know. I'll have to look into
It can't
that,
just be
honestly.
one.
Yeah.
It can't be one. Right. Okay,
And the elevator, I'll follow up too.
thank you.
thank you.
Okay, other comments, questions on the expenditures, please? All right, why don't we go on to the Board of Ed? I guess the only thing I'll say, which I think the members probably caught, which is that the Board of Ed did get some communication from the state, and they were expecting, and I think budgeted for a 70% excess cost share reimbursement, and we're getting 68. A total of $818,689, but that's a little bit less than what we were expecting, or budgeted for, I should say.
So that's based on a communication from the state, is that what you're saying?
It's not, yeah, top page 2, Nancy, they got some
Yeah.
kind of communication, they said, yeah.
Okay. I see, yes. Because I did a little back of the envelope calculation, and currently their total budget is at about 49.4%. And if you do the calculation of through the end of January, it's 7/12 of the year, that's 58.3%. So they currently have a savings of about 8.93% of their $61 million budget. So that translates into about a $5.5 million surplus. So I think they can easily cover that.
But these
Didn't
can,
we-
these
didn't-
could be contracts or that there were payments made. You can't just assume that that's what it's going to be at this point.
Ingrid, I thought what we talked about, and maybe you know, now is that they were a little behind in booking some transactions.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's the reason
They're
they're showing.
catching up.
Yeah, Any further questions on the Board of Ed side?
Just in terms of the reserve accounts that are listed here, and I know we have supplemental information that they just provided, I know it's not part of their budget, but I think for our purposes, it would be useful to know, and I think, Tim, you've asked about this before, about this cafeteria fund, where they have a certain amount of money, for the meals, and in the past, they had been provided for free, and now they're actually collecting money, and it's going into this cafeteria fund. So I think it would be useful just to have some understanding as to, bigger than a bread box, what kind of money is in that cafeteria fund. And
We can ask it. It was actually covered once or twice in the last couple months, Nancy, which we can dig a little bit and get that.
Okay.
And then there were some restrictions or some requirements on how that gets expended too, I believe.
And also, there's a listing here for the use of the capital reserve account. And again, Tim, my understanding was that once the non-lapsing reserve account was formulated as a result of our agreement with the Board of Education, that the capital reserve account would be closed.
Yes,
And-
that was my understanding. I'll email Christian about it.
Okay.
But yes, the idea all along was there's no point in having two funds. The non-lapsing would serve both purposes, and they would transfer the $5,573 over there. So I will,
Right.
I'll
And
communicate
as
with
long
them.
as that exists, they can always transfer money from their regular budget into that account, and we have no say in the matter. So I think that that's important. And under one of the encumbrances, they're also listing a scoreboard for Vanacore Field. And perhaps, Mike Frieda, can you explain how this works? Because I thought that the Board of Ed was going to be paying for that, but then I looked at the list that you gave us of expenditures from ARPA, and it looks like the town actually paid for the scoreboard for Vanacore Field. So how does that work?
Yeah, my understanding is that they're raising money to pay for that and reimburse themselves through the Tomahawk Club. I'd have to double check that. Maybe that's why they're putting it in here. We'd have to double check.
Okay, great, thank you.
all right, thank you, Nancy. Other members have questions or comments on the Board of Ed budget?
Yes. By the way, although I wasn't present for the Board of Ed's presentation in the workshop, I did review the entire presentation on NHTV. And the question I have has to do with their expending of the medical insurance, of the hospital insurance line on page 1 of their report here. Year-to-date actual, 5.2 million out of a budgeted 8.0 million. So that's 65%. Now, I suppose that they're, this being the month of January, as Nancy already said, 58.3% would be a straight line expense over the calendar year. But does that actually year to date, does that include the month of February or something? Is there a reason why that number's higher, or do they actually expend money more in accordance with what the claims are?
Well, I just noticed that it seems that that report, if you see 2024-07, it was run year to date. It's not run as after January. 2024-07.
So what date
That
is
would
it?
include if they made a payment in January.
Because that's 65%,
In favor.
the 5.2 million year to date.
I'll reach out to him.
Okay, and then further, their encumbrances, if they're spending this much so far this year, what's the logic in the encumbrance line of 2.4 million? If they're spending at that rate, 2.4 million is not going to cover them for the rest of the year. and they're showing almost $400,000 as available balance on that line. None of those numbers make sense. I mean, unless there's an explanation, then it can make sense.
Sure, I'll
Yeah.
reach out to him.
I think maybe excuse me one second, Mike. I think maybe the starting question would be, how far behind is the Board of Ed on posting their entries? And when will they be caught up? So that maybe some of these questions won't pop. I'm not sure. I think Mike still deserves an answer, by the way, but it would help, I think, next month's conversation.
Okay, so these numbers are net of what, the net expense of what the contributions would be from the employees. Is that true?
Okay, this, by the way, Mike, I mean, I don't know how they do the contributions, but don't forget, this isn't actual claims paid.
Okay,
This is just what they are putting into the fund. The claims, as you know, roll through the fund irrespective of what the expense is.
yeah, okay. So are they going to make payment or budgeted in equal increments, or are they front-loading
Well, that's still a good question. I
money
think we
into
have to
their
ask that.
reserve
Yeah.
fund? Or their claims fund, whatever it is?
I think one of the questions I asked, by the way, was, it was stated at the workshop that their claims are running ahead, and I didn't read the full email because I just got there, but that was one of the questions I asked Christian, was, okay, how far over budget are you running?
Right, how can they,
Yeah.
how can they believe that they need a 10% increase in that line item for next year if they're showing that they have 400,000 left available?
All right, so can you look into that, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's one.
I think that points to why it's so important that we actually receive the special fund reports. Because I think in particular for medical and dental, it shows the revolving door of money in and money out, both money from the town and from the employees, as well as the money that is expended each month. So just simply looking at the budget really doesn't tell the whole picture.
All right, Tim. And then I had one other question here on this package of stuff they send us. The last 5 pages are separate 5 pages on the grants. And it may have been like this before in previous reports, but I just want to know what the difference is between the structure of the report on page 3 versus the structure of the report on page 4. Page 3 shows numbers in the original appropriations, which I believe were what they anticipated using the grant money for when they put together their budget. Page 4, that column's all zeros, and my question is this another whole set of money that they did not believe was coming in the beginning of the year, or why would they have zeros? Or is that a mistake? Is that an error?
Mike, oh, you mean the zeros under original appropriation, Mike?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I see, okay, I see that.
I don't believe for other funds, for grants, we don't put budgeted. That's if we had a budget, you will see that original appropriation.
Okay, then why is there numbers for the original appropriation on page 3? The prior grant report page.
That is a good question, I'll have to ask.
We only ask good questions here. Yeah, and then the further question on that is, in the transfers and adjustment column on that page 4, or any of the grant pages, are those dollars already anticipated within their original budget? Is that whole set of expenditures, is that above and beyond what they originally believed that they could spend? Or is that reductions on those line items in their, within their non-grant town budget?
I didn't follow that, Mike, if you don't
Yeah.
mind.
Well, we look at just look at their expense report then, on the first set of pages, okay? The numbers here under original appropriations and transfers and adjustments, that was part of their original budget. Now, the question is, if they're, say, the teacher's line, the 1118 line of, I'm sorry, 1111B, 3 ones and a B. That 138,000 in the grant section, is that a reduction of the 118B line in their expense report? Is that a portion of it, or is that an addition to it?
Well, I think it's a legitimate question. My guess is, since these are federal grants, then it should not be, because if you got a grant, federal or state, you'd have to match up with the specific use, right? And not blend it in with the general payroll line, but perhaps Ingrid could look into that for us.
Yes.
Just asking for some sort of narrative explanation, that's all. Thank you very much.
Again, each month, the Board of Ed says we continue to use state and federal grant funding to supplement the operating budget whenever possible. So perhaps we could get some explanation as to exactly what that means for budgeted line items and how it is used. So, thank you.
I make a motion to accept the reports.
May I have a second, please?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. Before we go into public comment, there was 2 other things I meant to mention before we do that, and then eventually get to the budget workshops. I've asked the Finance Department to try and put together an estimate as best they can of what they think the revenues are going to be for next year, and try and get that out to us within the next 2 weeks, so we have it, in ample time before our meeting come March. And then I think, considering what we did last year, if the members do have cuts that they'd like to see and would like to discuss at next month's meeting, it'd be appreciated if you could submit those to the Finance Department so that they have those and we can get them on the agenda and be discussed next month.
Specifically, who do we submit those to? To you,
You can
Ted?
send them to Ingrid or Rich, but I want to send them to Ingrid, please.
So not to you.
No, you can send those to Ingrid. Okay. If there's nothing else, we'll go to public comment. Sally?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Sally Buemi, 5 Blossom Drive. I'll go as quick as I can because I know you're a few minutes behind schedule already, but I just wanted this opportunity to talk to the Board of Finance. Mr. Chairman, if you could indulge me, your meeting next month on March 20th, you will be putting together and voting on a proposed budget to be presented at the public hearing. And that's a very important proposed budget because it does change sometimes if we get some new information or new revenue sources, but it's very often pretty close to the final product. And as you know, at that March meeting, public comment will be after you all formulate the budget and vote on it. So I felt that tonight was my only time to make a couple of comments. If you can indulge me, I know that the workshop is not over, that you have a few after this public comment, but again, I felt this was my only
It
opportunity.
worries me that you said indulge twice, I will say that, but go ahead.
Okay. Well, this is my 11th budget season, Mr. Chairman, as a Board of Selectmen member, and I also went through 4 on the Board of Finance, so maybe you guys might even care about what I have to say. Both, as you recall, the Board of Selectmen sent you a note after our workshop of a 1 mil increase, and both myself and the first selectman have stated publicly in print that we're pretty determined to keep it at no more than a 1 mil increase. And just reviewing all of the workshops and all of the materials thus far, just on the town side, in the initial budget, there's a $10 million increase on the town side. I do not envy the position that you all are in. But I just want to say one thing about a significant part of the proposed increases, and that's new hires. And I think that this board has to look very carefully at any new hires. And I'm not talking about a few areas in the budget where there might be some shifting of positions with some retirees being replaced by lower level positions. That doesn't really affect the bottom line in the employment table as much as new hirees. And there are 11 proposed hirees in this budget, 8 of which are in the public safety, and those are very expensive. It's not just the salaries, as you know, but all of the benefits. And with public safety, you have training and extra equipment, very expensive positions. I just want to actually quote myself from something that I published a couple of years ago. Who's laughing at me?
Mostly people to my right.
All of you? Okay, that's okay. I was talking, this was in preparation for the 2022-23 fiscal year, not the current year, the one before that. I was talking about all of the ARPA money coming in, the $7 million to the town, as well as additional millions coming to the Board of Ed. And I said, quote, "You should know that this proposed budget creates 13 new positions on the town side. That is an unprecedented number of new hires in a single year. It is tempting to hire more people with all this federal money flowing in. But when that money disappears, you, the taxpayers, will be on the hook for all that salary and benefits." And I'll add, and for raises that occur thereafter. And at the Board of Selectmen workshop, when we were discussing the challenges of this year, one of the first things that the first selectman highlighted was the increase in Social Security and pension. And if you look at that, the initial proposal in your January 13th book, that's $1 million increase right there. So I just want, I guess the point I'm trying to make is, I think that we really have to wait. I'm not saying that we don't need some of these new positions, but I just don't think that they're affordable in this particular fiscal year. But there is some, and one of the reasons is I did get from the finance director today the initial grand list, which is showing only about $330,000 in new revenue. So the grand list is not really helping us too much. As opposed to for the current year, we received $1.3 million in new revenue from grand list growth. The October 1st, 2023 grand list is not helping much. And I also want you guys to keep in the back of your mind something that the first selectman said at our February Board of Selectmen meeting. To his credit, he does these overviews very often, which I think are great. He keeps the citizens informed of economic development coming in, projects that are likely, some that are not likely, and I think it's great that he did that he does that on a regular basis. And in February, at the February Board of Selectmen meeting, he emphasized that there are some economic development projects anticipated, but they might be 18 to 24 months out. And of course, we know that that might even mean 3 fiscal years from now, because it takes that extra year for it to hit the grand list. But it's something to keep in mind, especially with some of the public safety positions that are being requested. There is some positive potential on the horizon for economic growth. So perhaps we might have to wait a couple of fiscal years for that economic development that the first selectman highlighted before making those hires. And the final thing that I would like you all to keep in mind is that we, the Board of Selectmen, were all asked a question by citizen Nancy Barrett at the last Board of Selectmen meeting. We were all asked if we thought the town was safe, the people in the town were safe. And all three members of the Board of Selectmen, myself included, answered yes. And we all had our different opinions on improving education, improving, letting people, reminding people to keep their cars locked and don't keep their keys in the car, fire prevention. We talked about personal responsibility. We talked about working with our state legislatures on changes that might be necessary in our judicial system or juvenile justice system. But we all agreed that as we sit today, that the people in this town are safe. And so I want you to, I don't envy your tasks in the next month before you put together your proposal, but I really think that we have to be very careful about new hires. They really add to so many different parts of the budget. I don't have to tell you that, especially the public safety with training and equipment and PPE and vehicles. I really think that we're gonna have to put off hiring additional people, not just in public safety, but in other areas of the budget until the economic development that Mr. Frieda is confident about comes to pass as we scratch and climb, out of this pandemic. And so I just wanted to share those thoughts with you, and I hope you'll keep them in mind, and I wish you luck in formulating your budget for next month. Thank you for your time and attention.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Sally.
Did she have a list? Did she have a list of cuts? We need numbers. Good luck. Come on, we need more than that.
Any other members of the public like to make any statements? If not, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion.
I heard a first, I heard a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned. Why don't we take 1 minute and we'll start the workshop. Okay. Jen, you gonna go first? Who's gonna go first?
Cast it back.
All right, good evening, everyone. We're gonna roll into our workshop. We have the registrar of voters this evening, the tax assessor, our town clerk and tax collector, and then later we'll wrap up with the police department. So we're gonna start with the registrar of voters budget. Please go ahead.
All right, we gave you a revised budget because the one that was handed out before, we made a mistake. We didn't realize that the August primary was 8 days. Originally, I thought all primaries were 4, but it's just the presidential primary that's 4. So that's why on the one you have right now, you'll see some line items that are bolded. That's to show the difference between what we had thought was going to be 4 days, but it was really 8 days. So, and again, apologize for, but that was my mistake. So, as you know, we have the unfunded mandate of the early voting. We have applied for a $10,500 grant from the state, which we believe we should be getting. All indications say that we should be getting it. We're also on a meeting with the Secretary of State Tuesday, and she's requesting extra money from midterm from the legislator for all this early voting stuff because it's coming in a lot more expensive than anybody realized. So we have a kind of a breakdown of, we need moderators, poll workers, deputies, the stipends, the signage, ballots, lunches, and it's an expensive proposition that we're being forced to do. But in saying that, this early voting brings on 148 extra hours just in our office alone. So, and that comes out to be equivalent to us, be 10 weeks worth of our normal work. We're on a 15-hour work week each. So, it's a lot that's being thrown at us. It's the first time. We don't know if there's any equipment that's going to have to be bought. As of right now, we don't think that there's any. The new tabulators haven't been purchased yet. They haven't had a purchase order on them yet. And the new CVRS computer system hasn't hasn't been updated yet or agreed to yet either. So if anything else does happen, you know, we don't know what else is coming down the pike. So this is our best guess with the information that we have.
So Jim, the original budget that I'm looking at for early voting was 24,061. You're saying it's 27,499 now?
Yeah, and that's the difference between the 8 days versus the 4 days,
Okay,
right?
all right.
And this is for one primary, one election, and one referendum. It doesn't have any recounts, no second referendum, no audits, or lottery if we get thrown into the lottery from the state, because those are all unknowns, and you know, there's no way to just throw a number at that, so.
And Jim, what assumption do you make regarding the cost of early voting in terms of number of voting locations?
This is based on one location,
One location, okay.
all right? We really don't think that we're gonna need more than one. We haven't gotten any type of feedback that anybody's saying that it's gonna be overwhelming, that we're gonna need a second one. We do have to have the special town meeting and actually have that approved, but this is all based on one location.
And if we have a second location, it is going to bring the expenses way up.
Yeah.
Sure. And you mentioned one $10,500 grant and the potential for more. That wouldn't change any of these numbers?
Well, it would just be reimbursed afterwards because it wouldn't be coming out of our pocket, it would be reimbursed back to the town.
Reimbursed to the
Yeah.
town, got it.
Let me just jump in here, So Jim just referenced something that's very important. So the evolving situation here has also included legislation to suggest that more than one polling place could be implemented. The way it works is the town legislative body, which is the town meeting, has to vote on it. So we've said to Jim and to Jen, through Valerie, who I think sent you the message from me, that they're gonna come to the town meeting and they're gonna present their recommendations. And Jim just kind of alluded to it. Both Jen and Jim don't think we need more than one polling place. But it's not their decision, it's not my decision, it's the town meeting decision. So it's very important that we take their recommendations. Now, if Jim and Jen said we need two, then we would go with the recommendations. But I think they're confident right now that one location is the way to go.
Yeah.
So that's the backstory to what Jim and Jen are talking about here.
And that one location is Town Hall?
Yes, it'd be downstairs town hall.
So no schools would be closed, there'd be no disruption to
Correct.
the educational system?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions on the registrar of voters budget?
I think what you've done is a really good job here, guys, because you don't know what's ahead of you. Glad you're doing it.
Thank you.
All right.
Anyone else? No. Jim, Jen, thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Stace?
Good evening, everyone. Stacy Yarborough, Town Clerk Tax Collector. I would just reiterate the vast unknown of early voting, because as you know, as Town Clerk, there will be connection there for my office, although I won't be conducting the early voting. I will just throw out that since everything is so brand new and unknown, even if this year it's voted upon by the town meeting to have just one location, we have absolutely no idea what's going to become of this new law and the early voting. It could change going forward for the registrar's office. A lot of unknowns out there. So anyway, with regard to my two budgets, I really don't have anything exciting to offer to you. I've provided everything to you in advance. I do have a few things that made a little bit of a change in both of my offices. If you have questions about it, feel free. I'm sure Michael has questions.
Why don't we start with the town clerk, Stace, on page 20, and maybe the members might have questions on that budget first, if you don't mind.
Go ahead, please.
I don't myself, I'm just asking the members.
Yeah, sure.
Use COT systems?
Yes. Just
Yes.
renewed the contract for 3 more years.
Okay, and you're happy with that?
I am happy with them based upon the way the system is now. I will tell you that we just entered into a new 3-year contract, and then about a week ago, I found out that COT, the owners, which has been for 30-plus years owned by a family, is selling to a company out of Canada. So I don't know if it will change, if it will be better. So as of right now, I'm pleased. We did have a hiccup last year around this time, as you might remember.
Okay, so if I could interrupt, so I'm not an appraiser like Mike, so let's start with what budget line are we talking about here? Is this the indices line?
I'm not sure,
You asked something about a COT
right.
system, so what
Right,
line?
well, I just know that the vendor and.
Okay.
and-
Is that what the $5,000 is for? Is there an increase? What are we talking about here?
Yes. I also have on that line item, the auditors are increasing their fee.
Okay, and the other 5, I'm sorry, so the orders, and the other 5, the rest is for what?
Increase in the contract, the renewal of the 3-year contract.
For, is that the land records?
Yes.
Okay.
The great modernization that took place a few years ago. Very nice.
I'll also let you know that when it comes to personnel, I have continued to struggle since COVID to hire good people who can do a good job for our town. And when it comes, I'm not saying anything that anyone else doesn't know, but for this town to continue to obtain good people to do good work, the pay really is not competitive for the same, especially when it comes to my part-time staff. And I've had a request from one of my part-time staff members, yikes, to increase her pay. It usually, historically speaking, tracks the clerical union contract, but that's not for me to say, but it has been placed in writing, a request that I forwarded on. She's been with us for 2 years, and when I say this person in particular, it's the town clerk's office. I have yet to be able to find anyone to fill my part-time position in the tax office. I have been severely understaffed in both offices. I've had a retirement, I've had a new hire, I've had someone out extended for medical reasons for the whole month of January and half the month of February, most likely another month or so. I had a staff member who transferred over to the fire department, and so I had a new person and just me for the whole month of January and February, which is the second busiest time. It would have been really nice to have someone in the part-time position, but
I know we're getting pressure, wages in general are being pressured across the board, and I think they're getting pressured here, and I've heard tangentially other department heads say the same thing.
yes, it's an issue. I mean, the people, yeah, I don't have to go down the road and go into detail. I mean, I think every department is struggling.
Yeah.
Yeah, then why didn't you budget or request in your budget a bump up on the part-time line?
Because I just received it literally 4 days ago,
I'm sorry, you just got what 4 days ago, Stacey?
a request for a raise.
Oh, for that one individual.
For that one
Okay.
individual.
Right, but if you normally do it where it tracks with full-time increases, why?
Let me just tell you, Michael, since I've worked here for 15-plus years, no part-timer has ever received a raise. So it's brand-new territory.
All right.
Most likely because I wasn't able to retain them long enough because the pay is so low. And the workload is so high.
But it's gonna stay low unless someone asks. So.
Well, and God bless her for asking, because you don't get anything unless you ask.
Okay.
On the tax side, unless you
Hold
have
on,
more
Stacy,
questions about.
before you go forward.
Yeah.
I looked at some of the numbers for the current fiscal year for each of these categories.
Are we
and-
still in town clerk?
Still town clerk, yes.
Okay.
And again, this may be related to both full-time and part-time assistants. The overtime line that you're asking for an additional $1,000 is currently running at about 5.6%. Is that right?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah.
And that's going to be with regard to early voting and presidential year. I always have overtime, always.
So you're expecting at the end of this year, it will be,
Starting soon with regard to the presidential preference, the primary, and then the actual election in November, yes.
but that'll be the next,
Well,
right?
yes.
Next fiscal year.
But
right.
this is the next.
I understand.
Okay.
I'm just pointing out what the current numbers are. And also for the current fiscal year, absentee ballots were at 0.
Where do you see that?
I'm, again, just looking at our budget reports.
Oh, I know
Under
why.
town clerk, there's.
I know why.
Sure.
We got a small grant, and I was able to continue to use that grant. So the most recent elective event, I was able to have grant money applied to the cost of the absentee balloting.
Terrific. Do you have any other grants?
No,
Just that one?
not for
Okay.
that. I have other grants in different areas, but not for the election.
Got it. Okay.
Any other questions for Stacy on the town clerk side? Why don't we go to the tax collector side? That is page 23, thank you. Is there anything you wanted to point out before I go to questions, Stace?
No, there is overall between the two, I have a final thing I'm going to point out, but I'll wait till you're done with the tax collector part.
Well, I mean, the biggest increase is postage, right?
Yeah. And you know postage is not just postage, it's my tax system. So that has increased. Every single year they increase, so. And the
Not
weird
that
thing
much.
about them is that you don't know because it's based upon volume of what we do, and then they have their fees they charge, but that fluctuates from January to July to July to January.
So I'm not that familiar. Is this the system to post the taxes? What is the system you're talking about?
This is Quality Data Systems. It's our software,
Okay,
and then they do our printing, and they do pretty much everything for the the highest cycles, which is July, and then a smaller version in the January cycle.
okay. All right, I did notice you have a small increase in the part-time personnel here, though, about $1,000.
Let's see. No, actually, that's a, yes. And that was because I don't remember, to be honest with you, off the top of my head, but I haven't had a part-timer in the tax office for a bit. So I think that's taking into consideration the fact that I haven't had one for a while, and what it would look like if I actually had someone working in the position.
Okay. All right, why don't we open up to the members? Any members have any more questions for Stacy on the tax collector side?
I don't.
Okay, thank you, Stacy.
I do have one thing to add.
Yep.
So-
Oh, you don't have any capital, do you? I apologize.
I don't have a what?
Do you have any capital? Sorry.
Oh, no.
Okay, good.
So with regard to this, to both of my offices, in the past 12 years, there's always been this odd line item that was part of this, and it was this $15,000 notation that they've removed this year, which I think is smart, but it was not part of my budget. But what it was some indication of my use of the town clerk dollar fund, which is separate and apart from my two budgets, to pay for, certain things that the state allows for this particular, it's a special account, it's kept separate from other monies. And it hasn't been used for some time because unfortunately, I couldn't get anybody in here that was qualified, and then there were the 2.5 odd years of COVID where no one wanted to come in here anyway. But the reason why I'm bringing this up is I am going to have to use that fund going forward because I am running out of space in the town clerk vault, which is also the tax vault. And since office is not going to grow, I'm going to have to do some spring cleaning in that office and make some room in that office. So that grant, or excuse me, that dollar fund is going to have to be used.
Is this a separate fund, Ingrid? What is it exactly, do you know?
I think it is a separate fund.
special fund.
Yes.
It's a special fund, you think?
Every land record that's filed in the town,
Yeah.
it used to be $1, it's called a dollar fund, it's actually
Right.
$2 now.
Right.
Goes straight into there, it's been
Okay.
sitting for years and a lot of years. There should be a lot of money in that account.
Well,
But
it should be in the CAFR if it's a special fund, but I mean,
I just wanted to bring it up because
Yeah.
it's not here anymore, and I don't
Yeah.
want that to any way suggest that I can't use that fund.
I would take it up with Richie and
Yeah,
Ingrid. I mean,
I'll-
if it's a special fund and it's designated for the town clerk's
right.
office, I would think that you could access the
Yeah.
funds with the
Yeah.
proper procedures and.
And that's fine. Again, I'm just mentioning it because it's not in the budget like it has been for the last 12 years.
Okay.
Okay. And I don't have anything further unless anyone has questions. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Stace.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't see Gary. Is Gary?
here, he's here.
Oh, I'm sorry, Gary. You're hiding in the back there.
Does he still work here?
Oh,
Be nice.
come on.
I thought you went to Florida.
You should be in Florida.
Okay.
Let me just find your page, Gary.
22.
22, yep, thank you. I mean, your increase is pretty de minimis, Gary. Is there some narrative you'd like to fill us in on? Are you doing something that other departments aren't doing? Because we could have you do a little seminar.
No. The only changes are tuition and car allowance, and those are basically because of what the larger issue is with the department is, of course, I've retired, I'm only working part-time, and one of our staff members is really stepping up, and she's going for certification, and she won't have that for probably not until the end of the year. Hopefully, she will be able to obtain that. The situation around the state is horrible as far as assessors go. Trying to find any, there aren't enough certified assessors. Right now, I'm looking at what's available. There are 12 openings around the state for assessors or assistant assessors. Some posted as late as early as October 12th of 21. They're still looking, and like some of you may know, I've been doing a little bit of work with East Haven to try to keep them moving, and they've been looking since January 25th of 22. So there's a real shortage of certified assessors around the state. So that's one of the reasons I'm staying on and helping out, because otherwise there'd be a problem in certifying the grand list and getting the proper reports done for the state.
So Gary, if I could for 1 second, so, and Richie did talk to me about this a little bit, but on page 41, which is the personnel page, so you're the program administrator too for the next year's budget, is that right?
The person that is working toward a certification would be the program administrator too.
Oh, okay, so you're
So
the,
she would be upgraded to the same level as the appraiser that we have on
okay,
staff.
so the reduction from 119 to 67 reflects your move from full-time to part-time then? And she's, I think it's a she, right?
Yeah.
She's the program, okay.
Yeah, and there's,
So she's not certified yet, right? She's trying to get
No.
certified? Okay.
Is she becoming certified as an assessor or an
Yeah.
assistant assessor?
assessor, there's no certification for an assistant.
Oh,
So
okay.
everybody's the same here.
Got it.
So we're in flux on getting everything finally in place for moving forward permanently. So there's also a clerk position in there that would replace the staff member that is moving up into the assessor position.
Oh, that's a current staff member?
Yeah.
Okay.
So in all the juggling and the reduction in my salary line, we really net out to be almost the same as previous years in total. But they're juggling around with personnel.
So you'd be creating a new position as a program admin 2, and then filling that person's current position, which is
Basically,
currently,
yes.
did you say an appraiser or?
Senior
No,
clerk.
that would be
Senior
the
clerk.
senior clerk.
Senior clerk, okay,
Yeah.
got it, okay.
Okay.
And the Board of Assessment Appeals, I have that minor line, that's, there's basically no change in that except for change in increase in legal ads. So we are in the last year of our current revaluation. So next year, I'll probably be requesting some more money for the Board of Assessment Appeals, their salaries, because they'll be putting in many more hours than they are now, have been for the last couple of years. And
Speaking of
as you
which-
know, that's the only board that state mandates is paid.
Really?
So we have to pay them.
Because we're not getting paid.
I know,
Yeah.
I know.
How much do they work?
It's minimum wage.
No, I mean, how many hours they put in?
Well,
I may need a transfer.
during a reval year,
Yeah.
it could be hundreds of hours.
All right, one other question. Somewhere in this budget, I got to find it, we reserve every year for the cost of the reval.
Right.
Did you look at that line item just to make sure? it's
No,
in-
I don't have that.
I forget where that
It's a
is. Do you remember
special
that, where
fund.
that is?
Is that a capital item?
Oh,
Yes,
it's a-
I'll have it.
Is that in capital, you think? Yeah.
This reval is just a statistical revaluation not requiring inspections.
Oh, yeah, 20,000.
So it's much less expensive doing it now than
Oh, okay.
in 5 years it'll be a full.
All right.
But things are changing, and full inspections now are not what they used to be, because people are a lot more careful with people coming to their house and
Yeah.
asking for entry.
Right.
So the industry's kind of changing to going to more data mailers, sending out surveys, rather than going and trying to enter people's houses, because they're cold calls.
Right.
And it's understandably,
Yeah.
people are nervous about that.
But you think 100,000 for the statistical reval is probably a good number?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
We have, I don't have the contract here, but we have contracted with the same company we're using now to
Okay.
do the
Right.
statistical reval.
All right. Any other questions for Gary?
He looks pretty happy though, doesn't he?
Be happier on Friday.
All right, thank you, Gary.
All right, thank you.
Okay. men in
Chief
black.
Glenn?
Gary's a tough act to follow after de minimis.
See?
But the deputy chief and I don't get into the office till about 5 o'clock in the morning, so we have the next 9 hours to debate and answer questions and go over the budget request. I'd like to thank the Board of Finance for your time tonight. I know it's usually a late night, as well as the Board of Police Commissioners for spending time here tonight. We meet once a month. They're the oversight of the police department. We meet with the chairman once a week, and so they're well informed as not only what we do every day, but the needs of the community, the expectations of the community. And I hope to spend just a few minutes to talk to you all tonight. I know we only get to speak once a year, but to talk to you tonight about the needs and what we are requesting. So I'll start with the first line on page 26, if everyone's ready for that, the operating budget.
Go ahead.
That's usually the longest line to talk about, the personnel full-time. Respectfully requesting 4 additional police officers for next fiscal year. And I'll talk a little bit about where we are now, where we look to go, and why that is. I know there's a lot of civilian opinions, resident opinions. I think Mr. Frieda can speak to the expectations of the community members, not only residents, business owners, all the stakeholders of North Haven, which is a vast number, not just 24,000 residents, not just the business owners, but people who visit this town, parents of children who go to medical school and law school in this town, people who work in this town. So it's a large number. So what their expectations are, what their needs are, and what they would like to see. Like I say, this is a once a year proceeding with the commission once a month or once a week, but Mr. Frieda and I work together every day. He receives calls from the same community members that I do. We attend the same meetings for the most part. The commission supports us at those meetings, so we know what they expect and what they want. So where we are today, we have 56 budgeted positions from the chief position to the newest officer. We have about 95 employees altogether, civilian staff, the clerical union, part-time civilian staff, dispatchers, animal control officers, supernumerary police officers, our full-time police staff. But full-time police officers, we're at 56. That includes 40 full-time patrol officers. Now, with that said, where we are today, 3 of those full-time budgeted positions, 3 of those officers are in field training right now. So they're not out there in the community making an impact yet. They're working towards that. One of those officers is still in the police academy. She just started. She has about 6 months to go, and she'll enter field training. We have 1 officer on light duty with a pregnancy. She's off the road, not contributing to the community in a full-time capacity. 1 officer on long-term injury after an on-the-job knee injury resulting in a surgery. We have 1 officer who is retiring this month because of an on-the-job injury. So we are down 7 of those 40 full-time patrol officer positions. In addition to that, in July, we expect 2 officers who announced their retirement. So that will bring us down 9 full-time patrol officer positions from the 40. And in the next fiscal year, the fiscal year we're talking about now, there are an additional 10 officers who are eligible to retire. So we're at a point where things can get a little dangerous as far as our staffing, for obvious reasons. I want to take just a few minutes to talk about onboarding police officers. Unlike some other departments where a position is budgeted in July, we can have somebody in the seat learning the job in July and operating on their own in August or September. I'll just walk you through the timeline that the Board of Police Commissioners are already aware of. So if the position is budgeted in July, the first 3 or 4 months of that budgeted position for 1 officer, let alone 4. So 3 or 4 months, they go through the recruit process. They take a physical fitness exam, a written exam, an oral board exam, then they interview with us internally, then they go before, if they make it that far, to an interview with the Board of Police Commissioners. If they're successful in all those steps, the Board of Police Commissioners offers them a conditional offer of employment. Goes on to the next phase, which takes about 2 months, and that's a background examination, a background investigation, which is a polygraph exam, psychological exam, academic transcript evaluation, neighborhood canvases, pre-employment or past employment interviews, references, medical exam, financial check through the town, as well as drug screening. If they're successful there, they go to the police academy, which takes between 6 to 7 months, depending on what academy we choose or what's available at that time. And then if they're successful there, they go to field training, which is between 12 and 14 weeks. So from a budgeted position to somebody impacting our community, we're talking about 17 to 18 months in total.
Chief, quick question about the police academy. Are you limited to certain times of the year for police academy training?
We are. There's several police academies. There's the main post police academy and satellite police academies. Satellites will run academies when it suits their needs internally. They're the larger agencies, and post runs academies 3 or 4 times a year.
Okay,
so sometimes
so it's not
there'll
twice.
be a 2 or 3 month gap between that background investigation and them actually going to the academy. So
Okay.
17 months can be stretched out to 20 months in some situations.
But you do have some options between those 2 different types of academies?
We do.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
okay.
competitive, as anybody who watches the news knows. Recruitment, selection, and retention is a big problem in law enforcement nationwide as well as in Connecticut. So those academies become very competitive. So some of the, let me back up. So if approved, these 4 new police positions, budget positions, if approved for July, those 4 officers will begin to make an impact in our community in January of 2026. So I know just with all our finances, different departments throughout town, private sector, it's easy to say it's a tough year financially. Let's wait a year. let's take a minute and let's step back and we'll revisit this next year. Because of the municipal budgeting cycle, I began crafting this budget in October of 2023, which will fund our department through June of 2025. I know as a Board of Finance member, you all understand that. Most people don't understand that. So if these 4 positions are not approved for this upcoming fiscal year, we're talking about almost 3 years from now. Best case scenario, if they're approved next fiscal year, we're gonna wait 3 more years to have 4 additional police officers patrolling our streets.
So Chief, if I could, that's a good point, actually. If I can ask about the timeline again, then.
Sure.
So, you said there, if we budgeted for some officers starting 7/1, 3 months for boards, exams, 2 months for background investigation, et cetera. So, we're not paying them during this time, right? We haven't even made an offer at that point, right?
Correct. So the first 2 phases, they're
So-
not onboarded as far
Lem- lem-
as the
sorry,
financial
I'm
impact. So we
interrupting
can
you.
start before that.
In that scenario you just developed, assuming they met that timeline, when would they get their first paycheck?
It depends on timing. There's a lot of variables. You see all the tests, exams, investigations. Over the past 3 years, we've averaged washing out 8 out of 10 applicants. So that can set us back even more.
I guess what I'm saying is if it goes along the timeline you just described, right? 3 months 3 months boards exams, 2 months for background investigation.
Yeah.
If all goes well, are you saying that that officer, when he or she, I should say, goes into the police academy, that really isn't until November, December when we first start paying them? Is that what you're saying?
No. So a lot of variables. Ideally, we'd be able to onboard them in a perfect world and have them in a police academy being paid in August or September.
Okay.
But if these are, in years past, they've been half-year approvals. If they're approved for funding in January, that would be a normal time frame as far as onboarding for additional police officers.
Okay.
So some of the changes over the past few years, and you've heard me say a few of these things in the past, but I just want to highlight them since I only get to talk to you all once a year. So we are CLIA accredited, the Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement. That's been the gold standard for law enforcement across the nation for many years. This started with Chief McLaughlin with the first accreditation cycle. The Deputy Chief was a big part of accomplishing that, and we've continued with that. Through legislative movements, they have increased the standards for accreditation. So that's something that, like anything else, will take more time for our current officers to pay attention to spend time on with more standards, just more policies, just more oversight, accountability, more supervision. So that's just one aspect. Economic development, I shouldn't say I'm sure, but I would imagine every department head brings up economic development, which is a great thing for the town of North Haven. Any town in North Haven has done a great job with that, but with that comes an investment in town services to a certain extent. So there's been more calls for service with the increased industry, with Amazon and all the other businesses that we've talked about over the years. We've implemented over the years new programs to add value to the community. I won't touch on all of them, but surrounding domestic violence services, mental health, people with disabilities, de-escalation, decreasing the use of force, high liability issues, which is not only training intensive, but accountability intensive, supervisor intensive. So we have an increase in calls for service, an increase in crime, and an increase in every call, how much time each officer and supervisor has to spend on that call. So our other areas, our proactive policing, have been shrinking and shrinking over the years.
Could you comment, if you don't mind, a little bit more on the crime statistics you have for the town? You know, I've had a few people approach me saying that we've had an increase in crime. Maybe you could just fill the board in a little bit on that.
So anybody who has taken a statistics class in college can understand how somebody can make a comment to a journalist and fulfill their needs in an article or in a news blurb. But I could tell you that crime is up in North Haven. And I won't get into all the details. Like I said before, I report to, I have some details for you. Just let me search, and I'll give you a little filler while I'm searching.
Yep.
But I report that to the Board of Police Commissioners every month, and they can attest to the increase in crime. And with the increase in crime is the increase in fear of crime, which is, I said in the past, just as impactful as the increase in crime. If somebody has their car stolen on a street that has 20 houses, all 20 residents, if there's 3 people to a house,
Yeah.
all 60 people are afraid of crime. So this is the FBI statistics for crime. These are all the towns, I could give this to you digitally to share with the Board of Finance if you like, all the towns that report to the FBI their statistics. I was very broad in picking the towns to compare us to. And I know, again, statistics class will sway that either way, but I gave a range of 18,000 population to 29,000 population throughout the state of Connecticut. There's 94 municipalities that have a full-time police department, and there's 26 towns in that range. There's only one other town in the state of Connecticut that has a higher crime rate than North Haven right now.
Really?
That's not something that we advertise or certainly we don't brag about. But East Haven is the only town that has a higher crime rate. We have 41 crimes last year, according to the FBI statistics, per 1,000 population. And I could read you town by town each one, but we are number 2 out of 26. Now, a lot of people will, and I apologize, I missed the first part of the meeting, and Deputy Chief and I were on a phone call with one of the town attorneys for a personnel matter, so I missed public comment or whatever else was brought up. A lot of people say they'll know different studies and stats. A lot of the studies surrounding increase in police personnel are done in urban environments much larger than North Haven, in environments that are much larger than any city or urban environment in Connecticut, as far as if you increase 10 police officers, what does that do to your crime rate? And all those studies are surrounding murder rates and non-fatal shootings. So we like to take a more realistic and holistic approach. And the people that we meet with every day, emails, phone calls, texts, letters, or public meetings, we know their fear and crime, and every one of them says the same thing, that they want to see more police officers in their neighborhoods, in their business districts, on the main roads, for a number of different reasons.
So is your contention that an increase in your police force will actually reduce crime?
Yes, in part, yeah, absolutely.
Why is that?
The same reason why if I told you in executive session before this meeting that there's potential that there would be violence at a Board of Finance meeting in North Haven. And as a police chief, I posted 2 police officers outside and a police officer in that back hallway and a police officer in that front hallway, that violence probably wouldn't occur. It's the presence of police that deter crime.
But of course, you can't have police officers everywhere, and we've kind of done the experiment for the last 2 years of adding 3 and then 3 police officers. And again, we don't know what the crime rate would have been if we hadn't done that, that's for certain. But we do know that we have added to the police department and the crimes still continue to increase. Now, I'm not saying that the police department is not doing a great job, but you can't be everywhere. Even if you had 200 police officers, you can't be everywhere. And I think I'm going to go out on a limb and say you're hamstrung in many ways by legislative efforts to protect various individual freedoms. And so if police officers are not able to pursue criminals, for example, then that's certainly one problem that needs to be addressed by legislation. Not necessarily by manpower, because you're going to be facing the same number of same problems, whether it's 5 police officers on scene or none. You just can't pursue the criminal, and so I guess the points that were made before in terms of personal accountability, accountability of the perpetrator, as well as various things that people can do in neighborhood watches. Those are all things that I know that you're advocating for, but I guess I'm just trying to understand the connection between what you're proposing and the actual crime rate.
was a bit of a presentation for me.
Sorry.
So I'll try to use my memory to the best of my abilities and
Sure.
go through that, but certainly I would encourage follow-up questions. Like, I think we're down to 8 hours and 45 minutes until the deputy and I have to get to work.
Excellent.
It'll take all the time. So this is my 4th budget presentation. The first 2, I requested 3 additional police officers per year. Those were granted. I appreciate that. Everyone appreciates that, not just for selfish reasons. It doesn't help me, the police officers do, the community does. And we've been encouraged by that support. Last year, there was no request for additional police officers. In that 4-year span, we have not for one day been full staffed. So in terms of concrete metrics, as far as what that has done to deter crime, we don't have that because it's been an uphill battle with retirees, with younger officers leaving, with injuries, with onboarding personnel taking 18 months to 2 years.
Sure.
So we can't speak to that. That's not because it's a failure. Second part of that is one of the best metrics of successful police is the lack of crime, right? So we can't go neighborhood by neighborhood and say, on your street, there were no carjackings or stolen cars last night, but on your street there was. It's because we have 56 officers opposed to 58 officers or X amount on a shift.
Right.
So, yeah, if you're looking for those data points, we don't have that yet for a number of reasons. When you refer to legislation, I thought you'd take a step further and talk about the judicial system.
That too, for sure.
Yeah, so, I know Sally could speak at length about this more than I can, but 6th grade, the executive branch lessons, and I'm not the police chief in charge of state senators or state representatives. I'm not the oversight of the judicial branch. I'm not the kind of person who's going to say, well, if these people aren't doing their job, I'm not saying they're not doing their job, but there's a lot of people who say, this person's not doing their job, this person's not doing their job well, so I'm just going to mail it in. I'm in charge of law enforcement for the town of North Haven. And I'm here once a year to ask you to support us financially so that we can accomplish our goals with the police commission oversight, understanding what our goals are, what our needs are. So I'm not going to blame legislators for those things. Will I go on record saying that they've made our job a little harder? Of course. Have they made people suspected of crime their lives a little easier? Of course. Judicial system, are there some conflicts there? Yes. But just like anything else, whether you want to say it comes in full circle or the pendulum swings, in the short session that's ongoing right now, there's a lot of good bills that are now supporting law enforcement. There's a lot of communities that have talked to their legislators and they're listening. There's bills that are going to make it harder for criminals. So as police chief, I'm not going to mail it in and hope that somebody else solves this problem. I'm responsible to the people of North Haven, and I hear what they're saying. They're the same people who elect not only police commissioners, but members of the Board of Finance. So that's where this budget comes from. That's where our goals and priorities come from.
Right.
I probably missed a few points.
Well, but the point that you made is if these minors, as an example, are perpetual criminals and they're back out on the street the day after you arrest them, then it really doesn't matter how many police officers you have. The real constraint is that there's no personal accountability for those individuals or their parents for their actions. And as the victims of the crimes are stating, they're brazen. They are absolutely bold. And
I would just say that that's not a discussion for this room. I think the discussion for this room is more police officers, more of a deterrent. We would solve more crimes, and whether that juvenile or young adult is off the street for 24 hours or 24 days, it's fewer crimes that they're going to commit, which will keep North Haven citizens safer.
Yeah, I actually appreciate the back and forth, and I understand part of it, but I guess I hear the request. I'd sort of like to get back to some of the numbers, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So that's all I have for that one very first line.
Right. I actually have a question related to that, if you wouldn't mind, Chief. Have you had difficulty? It sounds like you've had difficulty actually recruiting the right people to become police officers. So what kind of challenge do you think you're facing in just filling those 9 positions, let alone 13?
So nationwide, throughout Connecticut and North Haven, there's less applicants. I would adamantly say that we have not had problems hiring the appropriate people. I think that every officer in North Haven does an outstanding job.
Oh, no question. No.
Well, it sounds like there was a question.
No. The question is the numbers. Do you have the numbers of applicants who are the right applicants to be able to fill
Yes.
9 positions?
I don't think there's a problem. I think our vetting process is healthy. I think there's enough people out there to do a nice job.
Okay, and also, sort of related to that is the timeline. They would all be on the exact same timeline, you think?
No, like I said before, there's a lot of variables as far as all the onboarding steps. Ideally, if the budgeted positions were for July 1st, we'd be able to get ahead of the game, trying to find academy seats as early as possible, get them through those first 2 stages and as employees in North Haven as soon as possible.
And do you have any difficulties currently with assigning your patrolmen to evening shifts?
No, there's a large group who actually fight to work evening shift.
Okay, so
midnight shift.
I just wanted to make sure that you're, not limited to, a certain...
Yeah, not a problem at all.
Okay, thank you for answering that.
No problem. So moving on to the next line, with an increased school resource officer line, this is an increase in combination between wages that are attached to the SROs wages, as well as a minor increase in hours attending additional meetings and investigations. Last year, you can see we spent $347,000, and we budgeted $335,000, so that accounts for the additional hours that they're hanging over to help a family with DCF issues or investigations, assisting parents with different resources, as well as the additional funding for the wage increases. The overtime line increase, we have 3 separate unions that are included under this overtime: police dispatch as well as clerical union, and this is an increase in union wages. Past 2 years, we've been short-staffed in dispatch, which has driven our number up, but I don't think we need to budget that much. That's why I kept it at 801 instead of going up to 851. So we should be in good shape with that small increase. Professional development is contractual obligation. We have control over that, as well as uniform and cleaning allowance. That's contractual obligations. The school traffic officers, that's just an adjustment in minimum wage. Really no control over that. And the training cost increase that you see there is directly related to new legislation as well as state mandates and accreditation. The water, as well as the gas and oil line, that's just a 3-year look back at our actual costs, where we're trending, just the cost of the product that we use every day. That brings us to vehicle maintenance. I know, well, I don't know, but I would hope that some people know about this. This is simply an accounting principle change. In the past, we had budgeted $45,000 per year for that line to support 37 vehicles in our fleet, which is crazy, doesn't make any sense, but it was because accounting principles then, we used the revenue for the cars that you see on private contractor jobs as a deposit in our operating line to offset the cost. I believe that the new accounting principle is best practices and above board. So the town is going to in a general fund, take in the revenue, which is typically about $200,000 per year from the police department. So this $200,000 request is very conservative. It would be typically $245,000 per year, but because the new accounting principles are going into place this year, I thought it'd be best to be more conservative and reevaluate next year to see if we need to increase.
If I could just add to that, so when we get the revenue budget in a couple weeks, hopefully, it'll be in there somewhere, and if it's not a separate line item, I'll ask Ingrid to at least tell us where it is. So if you remember, when we had the special funds reports, there was expenses on that report, and now we're basically moving it all into the budget, if you will. So that large increase reflects expenses that previously came out of the special funds, and The revenue, however, will also be in the budget, so it'll both be on budget in the future.
So is it gonna be a new separate revenue line?
Well, as I just said, I will ask Ingrid to point out for us where it is. If it's not a separate line, I would ask her to tell us where it is.
Sure. Okay.
If I could, I would just, not a caution, but just bring up the fact now, since I'm here, I won't be here next month, that because this was a mid-fiscal year change, there has been some back and forth as far as when money comes in, and we have expenditures that go over a very small line, the $45,000 line, there has been some back and forth. So I think
Yeah.
next fiscal year would be the most clean year to look
Right.
at the actual full revenue line.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was the outside duty line, the
Yes.
outside
Yes.
duty special fund?
Yes.
Yes.
It was always our belief that it only paid for the actual billed labor cost versus what.
No, you're confusing the revenue with the expense. He's talking about the expense.
Right. I'm sorry. I thought that was the actual labor cost versus what was billed to the contractor.
We also bill the labor costs, and that gets put into their full-time line, but there's also an admin cost, and that's what gets put into the special funds.
But I think the rest of your answer is, Mike.
I didn't think any vehicle maintenance
Yes, there was
costs
vehicle
were in
maintenance
that
come-
at
It
all.
Yes,
has
there was.
always been applied.
Yes, there was.
That's why we
Yeah.
got some negative numbers, yeah.
Okay.
But year-to-date, it's only $30,000. I understand it's a mixed year, but year-to-date, it's 30 out of the 45.
Right, it's essentially a lot more because we have been covering it through the special funds.
Got it.
Let's move on to the next line. And we're requesting to be adjusted, building maintenance and repairs. I know this comes up basically every month at this meeting. This is the increase in cost to repair a wide variety of things at the police department. It's a 40,000 square foot building that's not just a typical office building. It's open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week with 95 employees. It takes a lot of wear and tear. Currently, we're at $48,000 with 4 months still to go in the fiscal year. So this is where we're trending high. A lot of the contractors that we use for these repairs go out to bid. So that's been the generator of the increase in price. This is HVAC, generators, fire suppression, fire pumps, electrical, plumbing, video surveillance, key card access, just everything that supports a building of that size that's used that much. Custodial contract, minor increase. Again, this goes out to bid every year or every 2 years, I believe, but it's a bid price. Dues and expenses, this has gone up over the years. We contribute to a number of different organizations for training, for professional associations, accreditation, and because there's so many different associations, even a minor increase year to year, it just creeps up on us. Canine food and maintenance. Again, this isn't just food. Some of the titles are misleading, but we did a 3-year look back on the actual cost. So you could look back at least the last year as well as the current fiscal year. We consistently exceed that $5,000 line. That's food, equipment, and vet bills. Everything has just creeped up on us. Dispatch expenses. This is additional software needed for the EMD and EFD changes. So this is to support the software for the fire department to make sure that they get the proper apparatus out. You know, this has been something that's been talked about for several years. The first year we purchased this software, it was a capital line, but this is an ongoing maintenance agreement for software, so I thought it should go on that line. And then the last 3 lines, police software, recording lease, and taser and body camera. Those are just minor increases. So next I have the animal control officer budget. Do you have that on the next page?
Let's just hold one, let's give the members a chance to ask questions before we move on, if they have any, if you don't mind, please.
I have a storage question. How long do we store it, and I would assume it's someplace else, not here?
Correct. It's cloud storage. We keep it forever. We don't do a runoff because we pay for the cloud storage unlimited.
Okay, all right.
That's metadata, video, that's for the taser and body camera footage.
Okay, so, yeah, you have everything. That was the point of my question. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the chief on the police operating budget before we move over on the next page, animal control?
No.
Thank you. Good, chief.
So their animal control officer budget, very small changes on their personnel. That's contractual wages. They're in a clerical union at this point. Vehicle maintenance, there's 2 vehicles there, one's 5 years old, one's 6 years old, so a slight increase to support those vehicles. If one goes out of service, we're in bad shape because we have 2 full-time animal control officers and 2 vehicles, and they're obviously specialty vehicles. And then fees charged by the state, as well as training, those are minor increases, just to keep up with the times and the mandates.
Any questions for the chief on the animal control budget? Is the facility in disrepair or good repair, would you say?
It's
The building.
operational. We've been-
Operational, that's a
yeah.
nice way of saying it, I
It's
can tell.
operational. We've been making small
Are
investments
the dogs
in
and
it.
cats safe?
They are safe. The climate control is in good shape. It is operational at this time.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Next, have capital, if there's no other questions.
Well, yeah, I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead.
Just I have one question back at the added patrolman, the 40 to the 44. We have the labor page on page 42. I just, did you give that a breakdown between the cost of those 4 men in that labor line, in that patrolman line right there versus what the contractual increase is?
I did not. So the union is in negotiations right now. So that number came from Rich Monaco out of the finance department in terms of what that increase would be.
All right, so that increase right now, are we doing what we did with the fire department before, trying to like pre-adjust, or is it in contractual
I will
obligations?
double check for that, but I don't think their contractual changes are in that line.
So, okay, so 0% increase in that line.
Yes.
Any possible allocation of funds would be in the contractual obligation line.
So I think my understanding is the police contract is still open, Mike, and that may be why there's no increase there?
Right.
Right, yes.
Correct.
Okay, yeah,
So-
we made an exception with the fire department last year. I wasn't sure if we were doing that again this
Yeah,
year.
let me interject on this, okay? It's not in the budget. We, and in fact, this Thursday, myself, Rich, Kevin, Andrew are meeting again with the police union to try to finalize the contract. So nothing is in the budget.
Okay.
Well, there is another line that we budget an amount for,
Right.
correct, Ingrid?
Thank you.
Right,
Yeah,
where,
thank you very much. I
You-
just
you
needed
talk-
that clarification.
right, so I think it's a question of the actual eventual contractual settlement and then the movement from, let me find it.
Yeah, because if you look at the sergeants, lieutenants, and captains, it's the exact same number
Yeah.
from the current year
Yeah,
to the
it's
next.
contractual, it's
So I have to
contractual
assume that the
obligation line on
4
page
extra
26, right?
patrolmen,
This is the entire cost.
it's just
The
the
entire cost difference.
the incremental.
25
We have
Ingrid.
3 contracts.
$345,000.
Okay.
Yeah, but the line on page, excuse me one second. The line on page 25, Ingrid, under personal policy expenses, the contract obligations, isn't that a number we put in to
Yes.
estimate the
Yes.
contracts are yet to be settled and then are
Yes.
open?
Yes, that's
Yes.
if the contract.
Okay, so that may
yes.
not be the exact eventual amount.
Yeah, it's not,
Right.
it's not.
Right.
But there is a number in the budget for those,
Right.
right? Okay,
Yeah, as long as there's an allocation there, we
Yeah.
can discuss what should be later. Thank you.
all right. Anything else, Mr. Hollihan?
No, it's a very important clarification. Thank you.
Capital?
We love clarity.
So page 38 for capital, everyone has that. In the left column under police, I think this is a typo. It's 4 police cruisers and 4 what we refer to as upfits for the police cruisers, the lights, the siren, the prisoner, outfits for the back of the car, the boxes, the radios, everything that goes into a police cruiser. So
That's 4.
So
4 instead
four
of
for
3.
each.
However, in the right column, the dollar amount is proper
Okay.
for the request, the 4 vehicles to be purchased brand new and to be upfitted. So I'll start with the top line, $160,000 will cover 4 new police cruisers. They would be all allocated towards our patrol fleet, marked cruisers. Again, if you remember, last year, we only had 1, we requested 3. There was some value engineering done, and we got 1 new vehicle. I tried to stay very conservative with the vehicle maintenance cost in the operating line. If those 4 cruisers are reduced, that will impact the vehicle maintenance line dramatically. So 160 is for 4 new cars, 16,000 is for an uninterrupted power supply system that we need to purchase for our dispatch center and our server room. This is a tech package that basically if the lights went out here in Town Hall and there's a generator, just like at your home, there'd be 2 seconds to 20 seconds where everything would go dark, then the generator would kick on. This is how our 95% of our police department works, the same way. However, as you can imagine with 911, with the emergency dispatch center, we can't function that way. So the UPS system is for 2 very large batteries that have a maintenance package where the power comes in, continually charges those batteries, so power never is cut off from the dispatch center.
So is this a yearly fee?
No, this is about 6 years.
6 years?
Life expectancy. Next is body armor at $14,400, and that's just the 5-year expiration. Next line is $120,000. This is for the upfit. If there are 4 cars approved, that's the cost of the upfit. $56,000 for new firearms, which I requested last year. Again, value engineered was cut out, so I'm requesting again this year. And $10,000 was a request for from the animal control officers for just a decent-sized shed on their property. Again, the building is operational. It's not in the best shape in the world. It's safe for the animals and the employees, but they're running out of storage. So that was a request from them.
So if we replace a car with a new car, do we get anything for the old car? Do we?
We do, yeah. The past couple of years, just like everybody else's used cars, have been very high. That's dipped down. So anywhere from typically $4,000 and then the high end $12,000.
Okay, and then the firearms, is it, you're rotating that as well, or is this a?
Yeah, it's typical life expectancy of a firearm. Again, if you're a private collector and you shoot once a year, once every 5 years, your firearm will last forever.
Right.
But getting in and out of cars, with the moisture, the continual training is life expectancy. So we're in our replacement cycle for those last year.
Mhm.
So I requested again this year.
Okay.
Are these the guns with the red dot?
Ideally, we would go to the red dot. Yes, I think we talked about that last year.
Mm-hmm. I've actually spoken with a few of the police officers about it, so.
Yeah,
just-
that's best practices right now for law enforcement. I won't bring up certain towns, but there's been some high-profile incidents in Connecticut that have gone nationwide, internationally, where officers were killed and their backup officer had that red dot optic, and not only to save his own life, other officers' lives who were responding, but also limit liability with missed shots. He was able to neutralize the suspect very quickly, efficiently, so that's best practices for law enforcement right now.
Mm-hmm. Chief, I just wanted to qualify based upon the list that I have from Mr. Frieda for the ARPA expenditures, that there were police cruisers purchased for $103,000, and then another expenditure for $117,000, and then there was body armor for $6,000, and all of those things were removed from the previous capital budget. And so were those police cruisers over 2 years of capital requests?
I can't speak to the ARPA report, I don't have that in front of me.
Okay, all right.
But I can tell you, capital was removed and ARPA money was used for a certain capital. I'm not sure, I won't speak to dollar amounts, but it's sometimes a little misleading. When we ask for more police cars, a new car is roughly $40,000 right now. A Ford SUV is $47,000 on state contract. But to your point, with our trade-in value, we try to be as conservative as possible and just request $40,000, and the upfit is another $30,000 per car. So I don't know how that fits into the report you're looking at.
Yeah, again, I don't know where these numbers came from, but this is what I have. So I'm just trying to understand that there has been some allocation, even if it's not tax dollars, but federal dollars to actually purchase police
Last year, we
cruisers.
received one new car.
So just one. And the year before that?
I believe the request was for 4, and we had 2.
I think historically, Nancy, what I recall seeing is that the police department annually would request roughly 3 to 4 cars, just continuing rotation.
Police dogs, 2? Do we have 2?
We have 3 right now.
We have 3 now?
We'd like to expand that, but right now we have 3. It's a great program. People love them, do a lot of good work. It's a force multiplier. In certain situations, it's fairly low cost, as you can see.
And would this ACO shelter have temperature control?
No, it's a storage shed, so they can remove storage from inside the building, so they got more room for their animals and
I see,
store
so
things.
not for animals, it's for everything else. Got it. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from members of the Board of Finance for Chief or the Deputy?
Jim Leon-
thanks for
Jim
being
Leon
so
always
detailed.
loved the dogs. Loved to ask
Well, I
about the
asked the
dogs.
question for
I
him.
know, thank you.
That's-
Thank
He
you
was
very
asking
much.
about the dogs. I love dogs, too.
Chief, Deputy Chief, thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you for your time
All right.
Thank you.
and service.
All right.
I'm feeling pretty
That
safe
concludes
right
our
now.
workshop. Thank you all for coming. Have a nice evening.
So this is the list that I'm talking about.
The preceding program is brought to you in part through a grant from the town of North Haven. Watch town meetings or other videos on demand at nhtv.com.